Release of water from Ladgo Dam and its effect on coastal states as 2 million people are displaced in Kogi State. Disaster risk reduction protocols in tackling emergency, the Lagos State experience. Plus, Humanitarian Ministry puts smiles on the faces of vulnerable groups as the world marks International Day for the Eradication of Poverty. Good to have you join us on this edition of The Correspondent. We have stories that will worth your while. Thanks a lot for being there. I am Deborah Balagbubu. Always a pleasure to have you. Let's begin with the flood in Kogi State, where 9 communities have been affected. Among the 6 African countries neighboring Nigeria with dams that release water every year in the event of overflow, Ladgo Dam in Cameroon poses a significant threat to the lives and well-being of Nigerians' coastal states. Every year, Nigeria grapples with the effect of excess water from the Ladgo Dam with significant consequences. Kogi State is one of the states that is always flooded. Correspondent Ilyasu Yakubu examines the situation in the confluent state.
Kogi State has been on the news following devastating flooding year in, year on, with high level of displacement of people and destruction of property worth billions of naira. Available records from the State Emergency Management Agency indicates that out of the 21 local government areas of the state, 9 are seriously affected, with 420 communities sacked and about 2 million people displaced. The state governor said 42 internally displaced persons camps have been established to cater for the affected persons. He said the situation has overwhelmed the capacity of the state.
If a dam can be constructed to at least reduce the influx of this water from Benue and the River Niger, I think it will help us to some extent. And if this dredging can also be done, it can also help us. We know too well that our Father will never sleep until he makes sure that Kogites are being saved. Not only Kogites, all the states that are living along these big rivers.
The DG NEMA, who was also represented by the Director of Planning, Research and Forecasting, Dr. Onumide Bandele, said the agency has deployed its search and rescue officers alongside other resources to mitigate the hazards of the flood. She sympathized with the government and people of the state for the unfortunate incident.
We will say it's very unfortunate, the incident we have seen, but like we told the people who are in various holding areas not to lose hope, because we are hoping that the devastation will not get worse than what we have seen. So we are believing that in the next few weeks to come, people should be able to return to their various abodes. Profiling has been completed, and as a group, we are going to sit down to ensure that what needs to be given to the people at the holding area, we itemize it and get to work immediately.
Foremost, I will say a big thank you to the DG NEMA for deeming it fit to send people to come and see to the cries of the people of Kogi State. It's a very, very good plus. It only shows us that the government we have in place now is a very responsive one. And on the part of Kogi State government, we are going to do everything humanly possible to see that we alleviate the suffering of the people.
The NEMA team inspected some of the affected areas within Lokoja Metropolis for an on-the-spot assessment of the situation. Meanwhile, the Director, Search and Rescue of NEMA, Commodore Kennedy Mataluo, was in Kogi State to ensure seamless evacuation and rescue mission in the state. His first point of call was the Kogi State Naval Command to deliberate on the situation so far. He later visited the Inland Water Authority, NIWA, in Lokoja, where he inspected some facilities for the evacuation and rescue mission. He also interacted with the NEMA search and rescue team. While emphasizing the need for all hands to be on deck, Air Commodore Mataluo expressed confidence on the deployment of the resources for the evacuation.
From what I observed from the DRU, that's the NNS Lugat and the NIWA, I think they have equipment on ground that they can use to rescue people in case the flood exceeded what we are expecting. And the state itself, they have make available almost about 40 or so camps around the state. So I think that will be adequate to really cater for the people that may be displaced. Because I think the states really need to look at the way land are allocated. Probably there may be need for the town planners to really move people away from waterways so as to avoid accident or incidents in future. For now, we've brought in a water purifier and our staffs are on ground to provide clean water for the people of Kogi State, especially those that are displaced. And we believe that for now, what we provide will at least work okay for them. If there is need, we will bring in additional water purifier too. And I know that also the requirement the state needed will be compiled and it will get to them.
Kogi State Governor Ahmed Usman Ododo had passionately appealed to President Bola Tinubu to build dams within the three confluent states of Benue, Niger, and Kogi State, as well as dredge the rivers to contain the high volume of water that may be released from Lagdo Dam in Cameroon.
For more insight on the Kogi flood, we have Ilyasu Yakubu, NTA Disaster Management Correspondent in the studio. Welcome to the program, Ilyasu.
Thank you very much.
It's nice to have you. Well, we're talking about this flood that is ravaging our country recently. Every year we hear floods in coastal states, despite all the preventive measures put in place by the three government tiers. What is the missing link?
Well, thank you very much. You see, the missing link actually has to do with, attitudinal change, let me say, from us as a people and government as well. You see, every year, the NISA and NIMET always give their predictions on the amount of rainfall and some of the states that may be devastated as a result of flooding. And of course, NEMA always, mobilize resources, to sensitize the people and maybe have engagement with other stakeholders and the state government as well. But it will surprise you to know that lack of commitment most of the time from some of these state governments is always, setting us aback. Because it will surprise you to know that some of these states, do not have some of the required equipment for maybe evacuation of drainages and canals, in their various states. So on the whole, lack of commitment is always giving us a problem. And another, fundamental issue, that has been, bothering the process of this mitigation of flooding in Nigeria has to do with creation of dams, to maybe augment some of the volume of water that usually come from some of these neighboring African countries that do have dams. And the event of overflow of their dams, usually they release this water. And if they do that, when we don't have any other dam to to take those waters. Of course, some of the coastal states are usually, affected. So I think until and unless the government start thinking out of the box, to of course genuinely, commit resources to construct some of these dams, we will continue to have this problem year in, year on.
Wow. Well, apart from provision of palliatives, what are the mitigating strategies being deployed by the agencies to minimize casualties?
Well, I'm happy to say that based on the introduction of the disaster risk reduction mechanism in 2015 by the United Nations General Assembly, the situation seems to, have changed for a better because the focus has actually been shifted from the provision of relief materials to adoption of putting strategies in place. Maybe all the time, you see the intervening agencies going around, evacuating people from some of these flood-prone areas before the occurrence of that disaster. So by so doing, actually, it has drastically, minimized the level of devastation on the people and casualties at all times.
Good to know. Disaster is local, as you said in your report, because it happens in a specific place. Are the local emergency organizing committees overwhelmed by the disaster as first respondents?
Well, it's obvious that they are usually overwhelmed by the level of disaster that usually occur in their various domains. Like I told you initially, lack of commitment from some of the state government, actually is responsible for these, because as we speak, they do not have, required equipment, for the mitigation of the level of disaster that usually, affects most of the state. Well, I'm happy to say that just this week, or rather last week, the Kogi State government has issued, a passionate appeal to the federal government to, as a matter of urgency, construct dams in some of the confluence states of Kogi, Benue, and Niger State, and as well, maybe desilt some of the rivers so as to prevent, the constant or rather the perennial flooding that we usually experience in some of the coastal states in Nigeria.
That's good to know. Well, disaster is somehow part of us, so we'd like you to share your experience with us while covering, some disasters in Nigeria.
Well, I must say that the experience is not a palatable one, I must say, because going to those disaster scenes and, and you see the pity, or rather the horrible, situation that some of these victims are being faced with, is traumatizing as well. You look at people, struggling on how to secure, where to live and what to eat. Is so pathetic. I must say that it's traumatizing. It gives me a lot of reason to think that Nigeria must, do something urgency immediately. I mean to say to be able to minimize the level of devastation that we always experience in this country.
We do hope that relevant authorities will do exactly that. Thank you so much, Eliasu, for this interesting conversation. We do hope to see you again on the program as Nigeria finds lasting solutions to flood disaster. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you very much. It's my pleasure.
And still to come, poverty projection in Nigeria increases to 38.8% as the federal government powers vulnerable Nigerians. Join us again after the break.
Fellow Nigerians, this period may be hard on us, and there is no doubt that it's tough on us. But I urge you all to look beyond the present temporary pains and aim at the larger picture. All our good and helpful plans are in the works. More importantly, I know that they will work.
You're watching The Correspondent. Thanks for being there. Still talking disaster. Nigeria has continued to grapple with various forms of disaster ranging from road accidents and boat mishaps to flooding in recent years. What are the measures in place for emergency responders to assess prompt and effective response to emergencies across Lagos metropolis? Correspondent Musa Toliat is our guide.
Lagos State, like every other state, is not immune to various forms of disasters such as building collapse, flooding, road crashes, and fire incidents. Majority of these incidents are man-made, therefore preventable. Erecting 5 or more story building on a waterlogged land, building with substandard materials, building on waterways, blocking of drainages, excessive speed, overloading, and driving with worn-out tires are human factors that lead to disasters. However, in the event of catastrophe, residents are encouraged to call emergency toll-free lines 767 and 112.
When there was a fire incident on the road here, I was one of those people that called and they responded.
When we have issues on the road, they are always there quickly to ensure that things are back to normality.
Do you have an emergency, please?
This is where they actually receive your emergency calls. That's talking about 767 and 112. And so when they receive the calls here, they escalate it to the control room where emergency responders will be activated.
We run a 24/7 project, but we run shifts. It's a 3-shift pattern, morning, afternoon, and night.
To mitigate the impact of disasters across the metropolis, the Lagos State Emergency Management Agency, LASEMA, activates effective coordination among stakeholders, which include the Lagos State Fire and Safety Rescue, Federal Road Safety Corps, Lagos State Ambulance Service, the Police Command, and State Environmental Health Monitoring Unit.
The key thing in here is that we share information with all the key stakeholders, we plant together, we build capacity together, we have equipment, and we have biceps to respond to any form of emergency in Lagos.
So we have desk for all of the stakeholders. So once they receive the incident escalated from the call center, they would dispatch the relevant agency that have the resources, both men and equipment, to handle the search and rescue operations.
Apart from providing heavy-duty equipment for emergency response, Governor Babajide Sanwo-Olu often give moral support during search and rescue operations.
Let's continue to encourage ourselves. Let's continue to believe as if we are right there, do everything to bring out the life there.
Rehabilitation of victims is part of emergency management and mitigation policy in the state.
We are able to build a relief center in all the 3 central districts. We have one at Igondo that when we can have about close to 5,000 IDPs. We have one at Agbowa, and the one at Agbowa can take close to 3,000 IDPs. Now, the state now donated another relief center at Agbowa, which we call it Agbowa Phase 2. And that one can accommodate close to 10,000 IDPs.
There is, however, need for increased level of public awareness regarding emergency protocols, especially administering first aid measures before the arrival of emergency responders.
Safety is the responsibility of everyone. But with the level of emergency response mechanism put in place by the state government, residents will need to put their emotions in check and allow professionals carry out emergency response operations and give right of way when necessary.
I quite agree with you, Musa. Controlling non-professionals during an emergency is another challenge emergency responders face during crisis. Public awareness of emergency protocols is key. Many thanks. Our next report focuses on poverty alleviation. Nigeria marked the International Day for the Eradication of Poverty with an empowerment program for vulnerable groups in the country. The Senior Special Assistant to the President on Humanitarian Affairs and Poverty Alleviation, Delu Bulus Yakubu, urged Nigerians to be patient with the present administration and give necessary support as federal government intensifies efforts towards alleviating the sufferings of the citizens through various forms. Correspondent Ruth Agwele tells us more.
I'm really happy for these skills. I've learned how to install the CCTV camera. I'm very sure about that and confident about the CCTV camera. If I can have opportunity again to go further, if someone can help me or empower me, I'll be very glad to go a long way before I would go further for education in university.
Eunice, a secondary school graduate, is among other beneficiaries whose lives are about to change as they engage in different empowerment skills designed to empower them to become self-reliant and to breach the poverty index. In commemoration of the 2024 International Day for the Eradication of Poverty, which was celebrated on the 17th of October, the Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs and Poverty Alleviation and the Office of the Senior Special Assistant to the President on Humanitarian Affairs, in collaboration with a non-governmental organization, is demonstrating commitment in their quest towards reducing poverty across the country by empowering the youths and senior citizens who daily continues to grapple with the harsh realities of life.
I want to use this platform to plead with Nigerians with the present economy. The hardship is global and is a gradual process. Please, let's be calm and support the renewed Hope administration 100% to see our country to the next level.
The Permanent Secretary of the Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs and Poverty Alleviation, Abel Eniton, in a message appealed to other stakeholders to continue to uphold their efforts towards reducing poverty across the country, thereby reducing over-dependency on the federal government.
We gather today to acknowledge the resilience and the strength of those living in poverty. We recognize their daily struggles, their resourcefulness, their unwavering hope for a better tomorrow. Government will continue to promote sustainable development, climate resilience, and environmental protection. Together, we can transform our society, uplift the impoverished, and pave way for a brighter future for all Nigeria.
The beneficiaries have been trained in diverse skills ranging from catering, painting, makeup, CCTV and solar installations expected to last for 2 weeks.
They taught us about how to make donuts, meat pie, bread, and cake with sausage roll. When I'm done with the training, I would like to start my own business, like do it on my own to sell.
Well, it will go a long way. The jobs are not there, so this will help me to create one for myself.
I've learned how to install CCTV camera and solar inverter installations.
As their hopes are being ignited, it is a call to action as these stakeholders commit to changing the narrative through purpose-driven actions towards eradicating poverty.
No doubt, Ruth, Nigeria is working hard to give succor to have-nots to meet Sustainable Development Goal 16. Thanks a lot. And that concludes the correspondence this week. We hope to see you again next week. Thank you for your time, and God bless Nigeria.